Welcome to Wednesday and our third day of the summit. How's everyone's past couple of days been? Woo! Yes, awesome. Well, it is not over yet. We have a great day planned for you as well. And I think we should just get to it because I'm very excited for this next presentation. I know a lot of you are. So, creativity in the balance, why it's imperative to design for connection at work. And your speaker is Mirit Cohen. As the senior manager, yes. As the senior, no, not yet. I have to talk about her a bit first. As the senior manager of Adobe's Global Workplace Experience program, Mirit Cohen is passionate about creating experiences that help people live and work better. Throughout the pandemic and amid its unprecedented impact on how we work, she and her team have kept employees connected to each other and to company culture through a carefully curated array of virtual, hybrid, and in-person experiences. Mirit leads teams of subject matter experts, strategists, designers, chefs, and architects. She herself comes to this work from a background as a chef and creative food entrepreneur and is continually informed by her master's level study in the field of psychology. Please welcome Mirit Cohen.
Hi, everybody. Come on. Good morning. Yeah, get it going. Yeah, do what it said. Come on, bring it. There's candy in front of you. Let's go. Bring it. Throw the candy. Yeah, really, get it going. Yeah, try to throw out all the candy. I'm serious, yeah. All right, we're all a little tired. Okay, now, I'm gonna ask you to, you gotta come up and get the candy. Come on, scramble up here. Pretend you're 9 and you really wanna get your favorite flavor. Come on. My daughter would be fighting all of you for this candy right now. All right, there you go. Yes, you made it all the way up onto the stage. All right. All right, guys. Have a little talk. Figure out your favorite flavor and the favorite flavor of the people next to you. Go on. You can chat for a second. We'll get to my talk. All right, if you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap 2 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. All right, I treated you like children and you all really got there for me. Thank you so much. You see, I was raised with a fixed mindset, so anytime I do anything really big, I need a lot of praise. So I need you to throw that candy at me. Seriously, if you haven't experienced it before, that's a tradition in Ashkenazic Judaism when you do a big accomplishment like a bar bat mitzvah, you're getting married and everybody throws candy. So highly recommend experiencing that sometime. Anyway, now you know, my name is Mirit Cohen. I'm a short Jewish Ashkenazic woman. I'm a little nuts sometimes. So, by the way, my name Mirit, it rhymes with deer meat or beer seat. So if you can't remember how to pronounce my name, just imagine me eating venison on a bar stool and it will come to you. Okay, so I am Adobe Senior Manager of Global Workplace Experience, and I'm here to tell you that creativity at work, it doesn't just happen. Before I left for the conference, my son asked me, Mama, what are you going to talk about? And he's 6, so I thought this is perfect. It's my chance to explain it like I would to a 6-year-old. So here I go. I said, Asa, do you think it's important to be creative? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, do you think that it's important to have friends to help you get your creative ideas out there into the world as opposed to just keeping it all to yourself? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. And he was like, all right, good luck, Mama, I love you. So there you go, that's my talk. Okay. All right, but seriously, that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit more. I know we've been talking a lot about connection over the past few days, and it's been amazing, by the way. Thank you to all the speakers so far. But we're going to dig a little bit deeper and maybe bring it all together. So a question for you. Who would like to foster more creativity in your workplaces? Please raise your hands. Okay. And now, who knows how to exactly make that happen? Okay. All right. Well, it's a quick trick question because fostering more creativity at work doesn't start with just fostering creativity at work. It actually starts with designing for connection at work. So, if you're surprised, let's talk a little bit more about it. Anybody familiar with the lone genius? Yeah? Okay. So Isaac Asimov, he was a famous science fiction writer and scientist, and he once said that my feeling is that as far as creativity is concerned, isolation is required. The presence of others can only inhibit this process, since creation is embarrassing. Oof. Right? Anybody resonate with that? You kind of need to go hide in your little safe space. But I can't help but feeling that poor Isaac Asimov maybe didn't have a lot of psychological safety around him. But really there's more to it than that. And sociologist Catherine Giuffre did this really cool study. She studied 3 legendary lone geniuses, Emily Dickinson, Gauguin, and Charlotte Bronte. They were prolific, and they did like to be alone. But what she did was she snooped on their letters, their correspondence, and she analyzed the density of their connections at different times in their life. And she found that it wasn't when they were just solitary and not reaching out to anybody that they were most creative, but when they actually reached out and connected with their community, and their community also connected with each other, that actually unlocked their creativity. And in fact, psychologist Csikszentmihalyi came up with a systems theory of creativity. He said, what we call creativity is not the product of single individuals, but of social systems making judgments about individuals' products. And so it's not so much a mental process that happens up here, but a cultural and social process. And he elaborated on 3 specific components. First is the person, the individual, who is everything they are, right? Nature and nurture. And then there's the domain, the field of knowledge that they are interested in, that they get information from the culture about and contribute information back to. But then, extremely importantly, there's the field, the social context that information might be fed to and introduce novelty or get novelty. And it's the field that decides whether or not this creative idea is actually an innovation worthy of contributing back to the domain. So without support from the field, your ideas might be just dead in the water, okay? But how does it work? Like at a team level, for example, at work. How do you make this happen? Well, it turns out, indeed, psychological safety is key. Liu and Guy were psychologists who studied this, and they found out that psychological safety mediates engagement, which is what actually leads to creativity at the team level. So it's quite complex, actually, the way creativity and connection are related, but it's really critical to understand if you want to design for connection and foster more creativity at work. And it makes sense because, after all, as humans, we are wired for connection. One of my favorite people, the late Isabel Stenzel Burns, who is an expert on bereavement and law, said that we are wired for connection in a world where everyone is temporary. Let that sink in, right? And quite literally, we're wired, okay? In our evolutionary environment, whether or not you had support from your social network was a matter of life or death. Whether it was protection from a predator who was threatening you, or protection from disease through grooming with your fellow mates, having your social network, having friends, is a matter of life and death. And nowadays, at the team level, having friends, having a social network is critical for engagement and performance. And there's this relatively new field of second-person neuroscience, which is so cool, and finds that when you're in collaboration mode with another person, your brain waves literally synchronize with one another. I just think that's so cool. Look at mirror neurons and all that cool stuff. So, all right, let's dig in a little bit more. Let's tell a story, okay? So let's meet Tina. Tina is, she works at Creativity Inc., and she's really longing to be creative and to have more creative work in her life. But she's also stymied by her inability to connect with other people. She is a machine learning engineer who was hired during the pandemic. And this is her first job since she got her PhD. And in her PhD, she wrote a couple really cool algorithms, one connecting people to jobs and jobs to people, and another one that helped the UNCHR detect disasters and be prepared to help in the event of a disaster. And she really wants to do something similarly creative at her job, but she just keeps getting handed down jobs to do that she's not super excited about. And she's reached out, she wants to connect with other machine learning engineers at Creativity Inc., and she's tried. She's gone to parties, but she winds up just talking to the same old people every time, typically her team, and she has no friends. And it's been 4 years of this, and she's just lost. She's considering leaving the company, and the company is missing out on Tina and the brilliance that she could bring. So let's ask ourselves, how might we design a workplace experience and a world where Tina can be as creative as she wants to be and is fully connected? All right, why do we even need creativity, okay? We all agree now, hopefully, that connection and creativity are inextricably linked, but do we agree that creativity is something really worth fighting for, especially right now? Why is it so critical? Adobe's chief strategy officer, Scott Belsky, wrote this pretty amazing blog post in 2019 called "Creativity is the New Productivity." And the idea here is that humans have been trying to be more productive for years, right? And we've done that. But machines and artificial intelligence are also being more and more productive. And we're reaching a point of diminishing returns where no human is going to be as productive as artificial intelligence or machines, okay? And it's just a point of diminishing returns. Let's not bother anymore trying to make human beings be more productive. So what does that mean? What's left for us mere mortals? And Scott Belsky says that while productivity is about squeezing all the value out of existing resources, creativity and creative thinking are about discovering new resources. I'm really fortunate to work at Adobe, where creativity is what we're all about. We believe in creativity for all. And we just released what is arguably our most exciting product to date, the commercially available version of Firefly, which is our Gen AI tool to generate images, which you'll see some of in this talk today. And also content credentials, which I think is even potentially more exciting. It actually is like a digital nutrition label for images that will help you understand if that image is 100% human-made or 50% artificial, just in time for the next election. I think it's going to be really impactful. And internally at the same time, we just delivered a report to our leaders about the future of work, and the subtitle is Fostering Creativity in Changing Times. So this is basically us saying, at this moment in time, where we are, where the world is going, creativity is critical to the future of work. Okay, but as we've already established, creativity doesn't just happen, okay? You can't just say creativity happen. And in fact, amid unprecedented levels of burnout, creativity is really at risk. And it's not just me saying this, it's all over the news, and we've been talking about it. So how do we fix creativity if it's truly at risk? And again, that's a trick question, because I already told you, right? Designing for creativity is really about designing for connection. And that brings me to some more bad news, which we've heard about a lot already in the last couple days, which is that connection is in crisis. And so since we've talked about, it's so interesting to see how many times these same stats were shared. So we're definitely in this moment together. Truly, truly in crisis. I don't need to go through all of them. But for young adults in particular, I think it's really interesting that they spend 70% less time with friends than they did 2 decades ago. And this whole bit about how it threatens our survival, Leah Smart really did a great job telling us a little bit about telomeres and blue zones and how that really works. and relational well-being, it's really important. And since employees spend 1/3 of their lives at work, we have an ethical obligation as employers to work on this connection crisis, but also a tremendous business opportunity, as we know. Okay, who's depressed at this point in the life? Okay, okay, Candy. Did I just give you a little shot of dopamine? Okay, it is exhausting, it is depressing, truly, but with the bitter, we have to have some sweet. I shared a little bit of me and the culture that I come from today because I want to practice what I preach. I want to connect with you as an audience and have you understand a little bit more about the unseen aspects of who I am as a person. And it's important to share some joy, right? And be vulnerable with each other. So what I'm going to do is share a little bit more wisdom from my culture. And Judaism, by the way, is I think one of those identities that is often not really well understood. Doesn't fit neatly into an identity box. Is it a religion? Is it a race or an ethnicity? Is it a culture? It doesn't really fit. But nonetheless, it imparts a lot of wisdom. And so at times like this, when I'm depressed and overwhelmed with how big a crisis like this can be, this is one of my favorite quotes from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. So this is basically saying, okay, it's overwhelming, it's probably too much for any one of us to solve, but that doesn't give you the right to turn your head and walk away. It is time to roll up our sleeves and get to work because as humans, we're creative and we can do this. So are you guys ready to roll up your sleeves with me? Yeah? Okay. All right, let's do this. All right. In order to foster creativity, we need to support creative people, and that means creating the conditions in which people thrive, and that means, as we've discussed, making sure that they have connections. Employees are whole people, and 82% of them say it's really important that their organizations see them as whole people, and not just as an employee, as has been the case for so many years of work, but only 45% of employees believe that that's how their employers see them. Remember the fact that we're wired for connection. It comes from our evolutionary environment. Well, we've developed all sorts of species-typical behaviors that catalyze connection for us. And they are food, conversation, and play. There's more, of course, but these are three that are especially powerful because they are how we evolved to establish and deepen connections with one another. Why these? Well, when we eat, our rest and digest nervous system comes into play. We are more vulnerable. We are literally, when we share food with other people, we are at our most vulnerable state. And so therefore, we only do it with people that we feel safe with and that we are open to connection with, okay? There's a reason why we break bread with other people. And eating is also the only cultural experience that every single human engages in daily. Okay, you can get through the day without listening to your favorite song or playing a game, but you can't get through the day without eating and not feel it. So just to highlight this one as the #1 most powerful connection catalyst in your toolbox when you're designing for a connection. Conversation, it breeds trust. It's what allows you to resolve conflicts and have psychological safety. Play is a really disarming way to connect with other people. It requires a growth mindset. It requires you to just take some risks. So these are really, really powerful catalysts that we turn to. Play, by the way, also enables safe touch, which humans need touch too, but it's tricky at work, right? So if you introduce play, it can be a really safe way to have connection through touch. Okay. Speaking of species-typical social behavior, what about our devices that we carry around in our pockets all the time, right? We are so deeply wired for connection that we will get it any way we can, okay? And we will always reach to the easiest way to do it. This drive runs so deep. I compare phones to connection as processed food is to nutrition. We need it, we want it, and we're gonna get it. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the moment that we're in with generative AI. we have an even more powerful way to connect through our phones these days coming our way, because why talk to a friend or coworker when you can talk to a custom-made for you friend on AI? And by the way, I'm not here saying that AI is all bad. It's a matter of how you use it. I had a really great conversation yesterday with Tati, who's from OpenAI, and I just loved hearing her talk about how the company is dealing with this very crisis. But if the longevity of the loneliness crisis teaches us anything, it's that it's not easy access to connection that's going to solve this problem. And it's really not as simple as online connection is bad and in-person connection is good. Rather, it's really more about the quality than the quantity or the location of the connection. Okay, so Sherry Turkle, anybody familiar with her, of MIT? She actually studies this whole topic of technology's impact on our connection, and she's really committed to the conversation piece. She paints a pretty grim picture. She says, you're sitting with a bunch of friends at a dinner, you're talking, but all 6 of you also have your phones out. You keep the conversation light because you're paying attention to what's on your phone. It's conversation minus the empathy. Can anybody relate to this experience? Has this happened to you before? Happens all the time. And we do it too. There's no judgment here because we're wired for this, right? We want to do it. And by the way, I forgot to mention, this addiction to our phones, this turning to our phones instead of to other people, it's having a lasting impact. The generations who are digital natives are the most at risk from having a lifetime of this. Pandemic-era hires are feeling less included and are greater risk of attrition, who are some of these part of this generation. It's not a generalization. It's a little bit of a generalization, but it's true. So anyway, let's talk about what we mean when we say connection. How would you define connection? Okay, so we've been talking about connection for a little while. It's a little depressing, but we can do it. We're gonna roll up our sleeves and get to work. So I want you to take a minute and get your notebook out and just take 60 seconds and write down what you think the definition of connection is for you. And when you have it, turn to a partner or your table and share your definition of connection with each other. Go ahead. All right, if you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap 2 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. All right, anyone want to share their definition of connection with the group? Any brave souls? I know it's early. Yeah. Awesome, I love that. A form of communication where you're exchanging, it's a give and take, not talking at each other. That's beautiful. Anyone else? Yeah?
I said feeling energy is being exchanged.
Feeling energy is being exchanged. Love that. Do you have one?
Yeah, I'm going to combine one. So I'm going to say feeling seen and heard as your authentic self and doing the same for others.
Feeling seen and heard as your authentic self and doing the same for others. Yeah?
Accepting the risk of being emotionally vulnerable with another human being.
Accepting the risk of being emotionally vulnerable with another human being. So beautiful. All right, these are really great definitions. So let's ask our Surgeon General what he has to say about this. In his report, he actually released a whole glossary of terms. Don't worry, you don't have to read this. That have to do with connection. Highly recommend checking out, honestly, the whole report. But I'm going to focus on a couple: social connectedness and loneliness. And what's important to know about these two words that he defines is that they are subjective. They are relative to the individual person and their individual need for connection. So your need for social connectedness, what makes you feel lonely, is different than the person next to you. And they're both in contrast to solitude. Solitude is a state of aloneness by choice that does not involve loneliness. Okay, we all need solitude too. Remember back to Isaac Asimov. Any Brene Brown fans in this table? Okay, because she said that connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. That's a beautiful one. And Emily and Amelia Nagoski, who wrote this book that I highly recommend everybody read, they said social connection is a form of nourishment, like food. I love that. And people vary in their appetites for connection. So it's a callback to what Vivek Murthy noticed. In fact, humans are built to oscillate from connection to autonomy and back again. We need it, right? We need the solitude. We need the connection. And by the way, I heard the term social capital yesterday. That's in that glossary as well. So lots of distinct terms here around connection. Okay. This is a really cool stat. Employees who report having a high degree of connectedness, 53% currently are experiencing a workplace policy that is radical flexibility. That means they get to choose when, where, and how they show up to work. 18% of them are experiencing low flexibility. So the work policy and how you communicate that to employees impacts their sense of connectedness. So this relationship, this definition of connection is so complex that at Adobe, we built a framework to understand it. We've been talking about connection a lot, assuming that we're talking about social connection, but I also heard this referenced yesterday. It's not just connection out, it's also connection in. That inward connection is related to your need for autonomy. And it drives motivation and purpose in the world, and it's very important to be connected inward. I heard somebody, yesterday we talked about a red thread that keeps you going. That's that inward connection. And we have a universal human need for autonomy. Connection out is because of our universal human need for belonging, and that we talked about in the beginning here. And it's belonging to all the communities that you're a part of, okay? Remember the whole person. You're not just a person at work or a person who comes from San Francisco or a person with friends and family. You're that whole person, and it's important that you be connected to all of these to feel socially connected and not lonely. And then put yourself in the center of the circle for a minute mentally and ask yourself, are you equally connected to everyone in the circles? No, of course not. It's perfectly natural to have some weak ties and strong ties. And the term weak ties, it can sound negative, but it's actually not. Mark Granovetter defined this term back in 1973, and what he found was that on teams, it's really best if you have a combination of both weak and strong ties. So strong ties are what give you that psychological safety, that courage to be who you are. But weak ties, they introduce novelty. They expose you to new ideas, give you more of a diverse perspective. Yesterday in the Spire talk that was really so fascinating, there was a participant who said that she was a 9 on spirituality and a 2 on relational, whoever that was, and why was that? And is that wrong? And I would just say humans are built to oscillate between connection and autonomy and back again. Perhaps you're just in a place in your life where inward connection is what's most important, and you will oscillate back. Okay, maybe now for a second, why don't you draw your own spheres on your little papers there? And what are your circles? They don't have to be the same as these, but if they are, give yourself a little rating. How well connected do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 to each of your spheres of community? Just do a little exercise with your notebook. Connect inward. All right. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay. And just by a show of hands, who feels like equally connected to all their spheres of community? Anybody? Wow, that's awesome. Who feels like they're doing pretty well in about half of them? Who feels like they're really pronated to maybe one? Okay, and I'm not going to make you raise your hand if you feel disconnected, but know that you are not alone. There's 1 in 2 human adults in this country who feel lonely. Okay, wonderful. So, lots of different subgroups within this. So we know what connection is. We know why it's important. It's a matter of life and death. We know we need it, but again, connection doesn't just happen, and togetherness does not equal connection. You can't just throw people together any old way like we so often do in the world of work and expect connection to just spark out of that. In fact, negative group dynamics can really weaken connection. Who's ever been part of a group at work that really didn't work well together? Anybody experience that? It is not fun. Okay. There's a famous Steve Jobs quote that creativity is just connecting things. And I think he meant connecting ideas, not necessarily people, but I love seeing the word connection in here right next to creativity. And so I thought to myself, what if it's this simple? Like, let's simplify the whole systems theory of creativity and connection and all of that. What if it's this? What if it's innovation equals creativity, which is just connecting ideas, plus community, which is connected people? Could this be the ROI for designing for connection at work? Scott Belsky talks about, he thinks that the next metric for the future of work is going to be ingenuity per person, right? If we're not measuring productivity, perhaps we're measuring ingenuity per person. So if you're going to bring people to be together to be creative, then you need to design a workplace experience that promotes connection on purpose, and you need the whole thing: psychological safety, food, conversation, play. And there's a name for this. It's what I do. It's called workplace experience design. At breakfast, somebody asked me, what does workplace experience mean? So workplace experience design is what I'm talking about right now. And it's where you take the human and put the human at the center and look at their holistic experience at work and try to design for that, all their human needs. And there's multiple design fields that we draw from: architecture, user experience design, but ultimately it's humans at the center. At Adobe, these are the 4 groups that we think about: the ways of working, the environment, the technology that you need to support it, and the experience programs, which is my area. And the little subtitles under them are how we see the future of work going. The environment must be a place fit for purpose. Ways of working needs to have intentional and flexibility. The technology allows us to design with data, and the experience programs allow us to design for connection. Another way to think about this is workplace as a product. We heard about this in the panel yesterday. So if you think about the way you design any great product in a human-centered way, you need hardware, the operating system, the data stream that's going to give you your analytics, and then the software. And what I do is really that software of connection. Okay, so we know we need workplace experience design to design for connection and thus creativity. But what does it take for workplace experience design to succeed? First of all, you need support from your culture. And that means buy-in from senior leadership. whoops. Here we go. Buy-in from senior leadership and an experimentation mindset. Because how would you even know if your connection programs are working if you don't give it a try and measure it? So at Adobe, we have a program called Lab 82, which is our human-centric experimentation engine that acts on insights to create the future of how we work at Adobe, and you'll recognize really similar 4 pillars to that. We all work together. I want to give a huge shout out to Emily, who's in the audience here, who helps me lead the community and well-being work stream for this and is behind a lot of the examples I'm about to share with you. So this experimentation mindset, it's what helps us stay resilient in these changing times. How can you just keep up with the pace of change these days? So we're learning a lot, and I'm going to run you through some examples, and when I do, we're going to look out for these things, okay? These connection catalysts, as well as these spheres of community. Okay, wherever you land on the return to office debate, it's up to all of us to design for connection. And in fact, when we ask our employees, why do you want to come to the office? The top 5 reasons that they want to show up in the office all have to do with connection, every single one of them. Connection, 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 and connection. That's why employees want to show up to the office. Early in the return to office period, I don't know about how many of you did this, we had these watch parties. It was like, okay, we're going to have an all-hands meeting, especially for big organizations where it might be being broadcast from another location. That's a great reason to come together, right? But togetherness doesn't equal connection, and a lot of times it fell flat. People came together, they watched, they left. No connection. So one of the things that we are experimenting with is watch and connect parties. So what we do is we intentionally design for connection. We start with a tailgate experience that's scheduled on your calendar 15 minutes in advance to come together and see your colleagues. We assign a host, critically important to have a real human welcoming people and encouraging people to connect with one another, a lot like the hosts have done here at this conference. We have games. There's a little bingo, business jargon bingo card, so as you're watching the broadcast, you're paying attention and listening for some keywords. The furniture is set up in a more casual way like here, and the results have been incredible. So people attending Watch and Connect, the attendance doubled from just the previous watch-only parties. And when we asked them how they had their sense of connectedness, 90% agree that it helped them have a sense of connectedness at work. We also have workplace experience. We're part of real estate. We have a lot of really cool spaces that we've designed. I know a lot of companies are grappling with what to do with their real estate portfolios. But a lot of employees don't know necessarily that these cool places even exist or how to use them. For example, we have this music room full of instruments and all these ways you can do it. So my events team has been doing these pop-up experiences that show and tell employees how to use the beautiful spaces that exist and also just to connect people in these like niche ways that they can relate to that are super specific. So this one was a music jam pop-up and it was like, come jam. That's it. And people came and they did, and we literally got the band back together. And we've done a bunch of other pop-ups as well. And the reach may be small for these things, like a max of 50 people, but sometimes only like 10. And if you're measuring the impact of your experience programs at work by participation, you're going to think that this is an utter failure. But let me tell you that the NPS scores for these pop-up experiences, and we've done about a dozen, are in the high 90s. Okay, that's like crazy high for an NPS score. And again, the sense of connectedness and belonging, those are also, and 90% agree that it gave them a sense of connectedness and belonging. And as we know, culture can spread like wildfire through a network. So if you impact 10 people really deeply, that's a tremendous impact. Okay, but if we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that work doesn't actually happen at the site level. It happens at the team level, whoever your team happens to be. And nowadays it's really harder than ever to connect with your team. So we've designed a couple experiences to help teams slow down and connect with each other. So one of them is Gather Lunch. We have this beautiful restaurant in our new headquarters, Founders Tower in San Jose. And we've run a few experiments there where you sit down, you eat with your group, your team, and you're served courses family style, sharing food, remember? And not only that, but with each course, there's a little card game with conversation prompts. And each course gets successively more and more intimate. And we found that all the participants in this experiment agree that it helped them see their colleagues in a new way, and it made it easier for them to talk to people, to have these conversation cards, and they want more. They want to keep doing this. But not all teams can come together in person for lunch. In fact, a huge percentage of our workforce is globally distributed. So how do you connect those team members together? We have this really great program that's actually not even experimental. It's been going on since the beginning of the pandemic, called Teams in the Kitchen, run by our culinary team. And the culinary team acts as hosts. And this is not just a cooking class. I think a lot of us did these virtual cooking classes during the pandemic. This is a connection experience. So the hosts get the connection started way before the class even begins. So there might be like, if it's a competitive thing, there might be like a Slack competition going before you even get there. They send out the ingredients, recipes, shopping lists, get the engagement going before people show up. And there's a chef, instructor, and a facilitator who's facilitating connection. So it's really designed for that every step of the way. And again, it's pretty typical for when we ask the NPS question at the end of these events for it to literally be 100. I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. The average is in the 90s, and when I look at our stats, it's like 100, 100, 100, 100. So again, really deep, deep, deep impact. But what about designing just for personal connection? You're new, maybe, you're introverted or shy, you just want a friend, you just want to connect with someone not about work. So we designed a couple experiments to try to help people just meet new people. And one of these is called Join Me. We designed an object that on one side says join, the other side says focus, and you can put it out on your table at lunch, and it's a way for you to autonomously decide whether you want connection or not. 1 in 3 people who used this block had a connection, and about half of them were people that they never met before. By the way, Join Me recently won 2 design awards this year, the IDEA Awards and Fastco's Innovation by Design Award. Big passion project with Emily here, so we're pretty proud of that. And another one, which we just launched last week. How do you even know what's going on? So many companies provide so many amazing opportunities to connect, but it can be overwhelming. You've got so much communication coming at you. You really only want to do the things you want to do. So personally, how do you find out what's going on? Wouldn't it be great if you had like a personal feed that's like, you know, hey Mirit, you love dogs and food and sci-fi. Here's some events and communities you might want to join. So that's what we did. We have a workplace app called the Adobe Life app, and we designed this feature that will allow you to state your interests and then personally feed you events and communities to join. And it's just gotten started, so we will see where this goes. But if it goes well, we will expand it to a global community. Okay. So we talked about site connection, local connection, and personal connection. Designing for connection is also really necessary for inclusion. Everyone needs it, okay? Make no mistake, connection is not just for extroverts, okay? Introverts, everybody from every racial, ethnic, gender, ability, neurotype, everybody needs connection. And as Nagoski said, people vary in their appetites for connection, and we are built to oscillate, remember all of that? I'm going to take this a step further and say people vary in their appetite for connection, not just person to person, but at different times of your day, your week, your year, your seasons, your life. It changes all the time. It's really a balancing act. This is where my slides stop working. I'm not sure why. Okay, that's all right. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, cool, it's a balancing act. Do you see that? Okay, ta-da. All right, so there are many factors, whether you're in a relationship or still not working. I'm just gonna talk through this part, whether you're in a relationship, you're single, you're child-free, you're a caregiver, you're painfully shy, you're a committed extrovert, you're with your people, or you're the only person of your race or ethnicity in an entire room, whether you have the ability to engage in conversation because you speak the language, or you've been surrounded by people for 3 days at a conference and have been talking nonstop and are just exhausted. All those people need connection. Make no mistake, everyone needs connection to survive and thrive. So these are all my cool little people bouncing, but we're gonna see if we can get past them. Okay. So it's critical to offer a wide range of opportunities for people to connect. I talked about food, my favorite catalyst for connection, and I like to say that sharing a meal is the original social networking. We all gathered around the fire and ate together before we ever had cell phones. I don't know why it's going weird. Okay, so there's this really cool experience we just did for the second year in a row called the Adobe Life Food Festival. And taking this idea that food is the universal connector, anyone can connect about it, we wanted to create a platform that literally anyone in the whole company could share of themselves. So it's a very simple prompt to our sites around the world. We're a global company with 30,000 people, more than 40 different sites, and we simply said, have a food experience at your site, or for remote people as well, that just shares your local food culture with each other and with the rest of us. And we created this online hub that allowed people to share recipes, and we had videos, and we also activated our Adobe Food Slack channel, which is already one of our most favorite Slack channels. And I don't know why this is, we're just gonna see all the slides a couple times. Okay, the impact for this, which was a huge experience, was just like, I didn't even expect this level of impact. We reached 2,800 people, and in those in-person experiences that we were able to survey, the NPS was 94. Online, we reached 1,400 people, and employees' stories were shared and were viewed by over 1,000 people. Our participation in our Slack channel increased by 10% year over year, and people's sense of belonging, connectedness, feelings of inspiration were all in the 90% agree level. So huge impact by using food to connect people. All right, remember Tina? Okay, here's where I tell you that Tina is not hypothetical. Tina's a real person, and I'm gonna tell you how I met her. So the talent development team at Adobe, they recognized the struggle that pandemic hires were facing, and they wanted to do something about it. So they proposed this idea of a career fest, which was gonna be a week-long experience devoted to career development and networking, and they proposed this to senior leadership. They got approval from senior leadership and buy-in, and then they came to my team, the Workplace Experience Design team, for help, specifically with that, how can we help employees network better? And it was like, yay, ding, 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 connection, designing for that, that's what we love doing. So we helped them design a networking event that went far beyond what you typically see. And one of the coolest, whoops, oh. That's really weird. Okay, it's okay, we can roll with it. The networking event, anybody see Love is Blind on Netflix? Okay, so there's 2 conversation pods. People go in on either side. I think someone mentioned it. You mentioned it yesterday, I know. So we copied that brilliant idea. So people went into either side and were given conversation prompts and asked not to introduce themselves or say their title or role or anything until they got through the conversation. And they had a conversation and then they came out. There were some Jenga blocks with conversation prompts on them. We found these conversation pods in particular were very impactful for people who were introverted or shy. Neurodivergent people really told us that like they didn't have to make eye contact, they didn't have to worry about all the social anxiety, and they just got to connect. And that's where I met Tina. She was actually the conversation pod mate of one of my colleagues who pulled us together and said, you have to meet each other. Tina designed this algorithm that matches people with jobs, and I'm interested in connecting people, so we got to talking. And that's how I learned about her and the struggles she was facing. And this was the first event in for her 4 years where she actually met new people. And not only that, she even crossed paths with one of the people who had been on her interview panel. Are we doing it? Yeah, okay, cool. So this is that cool event. She crossed paths with somebody who had been on her interview panel. One thing led to another, and she got a job on the Firefly team that I talked about earlier. How cool for her, and how lucky for Adobe that someone as amazing as Tina is now on this incredibly innovative and creative Gen AI product. And our team, we're busy analyzing all the insights from this year of experiments. So what can you do to have design for connection in your workplace? One, invest in a workplace experience design function. Really understand what that means. It's not real estate or amenities. It's workplace experience design. Number 2, include connection in the purpose of any gathering. And I'm gonna just zoom out for a second and say, in order to do that, you need to actually have a purpose for your gathering. So I can't believe I made it this far into the talk without shouting out my favorite person, Priya Parker, who wrote The Art of Gathering, if you haven't read that book. Having a distinct, unique, disputable purpose for every gathering is really, really important. And I would just say that that purpose can be share the latest insights about our product with the whole team. That's a very specific purpose, but connection should never be 0% of the purpose. Make it more than 0%. It could be 1%. It could be just a quick hello to everybody, but it should never be 0. And with that, ensure connection is led, hosted, and supported by senior leaders, okay? Whoever's leading that meeting, it's on them to make sure that connection is hosted. They don't have to be the host. Not every leader is a natural connector. That's fine. You can assign somebody. There's tons of people who want to help and be that people person who's going to connect and host other people. Make sure someone has that role. So maybe ask yourselves for a second, do you have what it takes to do this at your workplace? Jot it down. If not, here, let's look at these again. Do you think you have what it takes in your workplace to design for connection? And if not, what can you do about it? Write down something to yourself, an action that you're going to take. We'll check the time and see how we're doing. Yeah, we better get going. So I'm going to end with one more story of unexpected connection from the animal kingdom. This story was in the New York Times, and everybody sent it to me because I love animals. I used to study animal behavior, and it's called Polly Wants a Video Chat. So they took these parrots, captive, domestic parrots who were pets, and they're alone, and the researchers asked themselves whether they could teach these parrots to call friends online. And so they taught them that if they rang a bell, a little, their person would come and bring a screen, and then they could choose a friend to call. And so they learned it real fast. So once they learned it, they began asking for their feathered friends a lot. They mirrored each other's behavior, grooming together and singing together. And the notion of choice was very important, is what the researchers said. Some of the birds quickly developed favorite friends. Right? Okay, so just like Vivek Murthy told us, and the Nagoski sisters told us, autonomy of choice is so, so important. It's critical to that sense of connection. What were the results? Well, every bird used the system, every single bird. Most of the birds exhibited high motivation and intentionality, and all the caretakers reported perceived benefits, some arguably life transformative, such as learning to forage or even to fly by watching others. And I want to ask you all, would these birds have learned to fly if they were told when and where to connect? The authors of the study raised some ethical concerns about introducing screens to these birds, and would there be runaway effects that would be bad for them? Sound familiar? Okay. But again, it's not that online connection is bad and in-person connection is good. It's about when leaders, and in this case the leaders are their humans, recognize their power and use it to design for connection and make it so attractive that their users will want to show up for it and choose to participate of their own volition, that they might just be inspired to create something truly innovative or even to fly. Thank you very much.
Am I on? Oh, Mirit Cohen, thank you so much.